Hi, this is Mark Rivera from Ringo Starr and Billy Joel, and this is Music Marketing Monday. Peace and love.
This show is brought to you by HostBaby.com, web hosting for musicians.
It's episode 26 of Music Marketing Monday. On this one, we reveal some of the results of the poll that you voted in to let us know what topics we should cover in upcoming episodes. And we jump into one of the top vote getters, music publicity, starting with the basics. This is going to be another good one, so hang on. Here we go.
Information, inspiration, motivation for the modern musicpreneur.
Time to start your week right.
Here it comes. Music Marketing Monday with your host, Bob Baker,
Mr. Buzz Factor,
and Billy Gryzak.
The Music Marketing Mind.
Ready? Are you sure?
Set.
Here it comes. Swing, baby.
Well, we had a wonderful week letting you take the wheel of our music marketing car, and we can't wait to reveal some of the results and get into the number one choice. But before we do that, I just want to let you know that you are, in fact, listening to Music Marketing Monday with me, Billy Gryzak, the Music Marketing Mind, and
Bob Baker, Mr. Buzz Factor. Thanks for tuning in. Billy, it's good to be back with you again.
Hey, yeah, I always wonder, when I do that, hey, this is Billy Gryzak, the Music Marketing Mind, and, and I always wonder, does that make me the superhero and you're the sidekick?
Oh no, we are peers, my friend. we both wear our capes proudly.
So basically, it's more like a dynamic. No, that was still a sidekick. We're like the Justice League or the Avengers or the Fantastic Two.
Yeah, exactly. And we both have giant B's on our chest, the letter B for Billy and Bob. So we're equals in that regard. I like to think
we are the killer bees. Yes, that's us, the killer bees. Anyway, hey Bob, it was a great week. I did some crazy things, and we could talk about it or not, but the craziest thing was we put the driver's seat, we turned it over to our fans and friends and followers, and came up with some interesting stuff. Yeah, we gave you last episode a list of potential topics that were submitted to us, and then we put it up for a vote on a poll and asked you to communicate with us in various ways, and it's pretty interesting to see the results. Do you want to mention what some of the top vote getters are at this point? Yeah. So you have the results in front of you, I believe. I do. Envelope, please. Okay, so in number, we'll just go 1 through 5 instead of going 5 through 1. It's okay. Number 1 was Publicity, which is a gigantic circus tent of topics within it. We have unusual venues came up number 2. Unusual performing niches or niches, depending upon how you like to say that. Raising money to make a CD, not crowdfunding, and then how to run a successful crowdfunding campaign. So those were the top 5. Now, the other thing that I thought was interesting was we opened it up to suggestions that I did, that we did not add, and we did have a few, and I'd like to just mention those as well.
Sure.
One was getting band members more involved in the process. I thought that was pretty interesting. Also, how to build audience when starting out from 0 to 100 fans, for example. I love this one, Bob. You ready? How to get others to do work for you.
Well, that's a good, I'll listen to that one.
Next was the importance of image, or branding. And then last, of the suggestion, the write-in votes was, you have to have the basics first, sound check tips, volume control, I love this one. How to keep people from turning up all night, vocal health, things like that. So, those were some of the write-ins.
That's very cool. I like the one earlier. How do you get the first 100 fans? That's not the way that you phrased it, but I like that as a topic for upcoming. How do you get your first 100 fans? That would be a good one.
That's a great one. And then, of course, at #MusicMM, we had a couple of our favorite followers here, Rowan Britter. I always pronounce her Bridler. Excuse me, Rowan. I'm sorry. And she'd be happy. Actually, she offered to add some commentary to UK related tips, and that's something we might want to check into, because we do have an international audience, and we are pretty well versed in what's going on here in the States, but things are a little bit different over across the pond, as they say.
Right. And I like to think a lot of these marketing principles that we talk about are universal. However, there are some peculiarities or distinctions that in certain aspects based on what the culture that you're in and the country that you're in and all that stuff. And that is good to be made aware of that. And I could use some edumacating in that area myself.
Absolutely. And last couple of things, she also said her votes were for busking, publishing, licensing. And then our good friend Jason Didner said his vote is for booking and performing in unconventional venues, and says, "Love your podcast."
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so keep using that hashtag, the number sign MusicMM. Mostly on Twitter is where we check for those. We'll keep checking those and mention your name if you have something that we can add to the podcast.
So, Bob.
Yes, sir.
Publicity.
Yeah. Well, before we talk about the publicity, I just want to mention something real quick, kind of shift gears here, and just to mention it, because a lot of people know that I live in St. Louis, Missouri, born and raised here, lived here my entire life. And if you're listening to this the week this comes out, you've no doubt heard about this, some kind of an event going on in a suburb of St. Louis called Ferguson. So I just wanted to mention it. I'm not going to spend much time on it. I'm not going to get political at all. But Ferguson is about 10 miles from where I live. I also live in the suburbs of St. Louis. And so while I have not been down there, I know people that live in that area. A lot of friends of mine are going to peacefully demonstrate. And so, and obviously there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of controversy. There's so many different levels of complexity to this situation, and it's getting, national and international attention. So I just want to mention that I'm okay. I'm safe. Most of the dangerous activity, you might say, is really isolated to that area there. But yeah, it's got all of us sort of on edge and wanting a peaceful solution. So all I'm going to do is just ask everybody to pray and hold, regardless of where you stand on, what's right or wrong, just to pray that there's a peaceful resolution and the things that cause this get worked out, and however that looks. And so, but I just wanted to mention it, since a lot of people do know that I live in the area, not far from there.
Yeah, I was giving that a lot of thought as I was watching events unfold, but yeah, well, we're really happy that you're okay, Bob. That's important too.
Well, thank you. Thanks for giving me a moment just to mention that, and just hold the highest good for all concerned, for this area and for the world. So awesome. All right, so a serious moment there on Music Marketing Monday, but I think it needed to be said. So publicity was one of the number one vote getters, and so I think I might have mentioned last week, probably mentioned it on previous episodes too, that there was a 10-year period of my life where I published a local music newspaper here in St. Louis. And I learned a lot during that full decade of my life. It was actually during that period that I made my transition from being strictly a musician, to being a writer and a journalist, then to being a published author during that period. And then I put the paper to rest, so to speak, so I could go on and pursue this career that I've been on, for 15, close to 20 years since, obviously as an author, teacher, speaker. But I learned a ton publishing my own paper, because I was on the receiving end. I had to make the decisions for what content appeared in that newspaper. And so, believe me, over that 10-year period, whether it was face-to-face communications with people, phone calls, email, press kits showing up in the mail, which was a lot more common way back when I was doing my newspaper. I learned a lot about what it was like to be on the receiving end, I guess, of media pitches. And I learned that a lot of people do it the wrong way. They do it in a disservice to themselves in the way that they go about it. And then I used what I learned to turn around. And then when I sought out publicity for my own activities, I said, well, I'm going to use I'm not going to make the same mistakes that these people did. So I applied that to my own pursuit of media exposure, and I've been very fortunate to have been on NPR a couple of times, and with Vibe magazine and Music Connection and American Songwriter and so on and so forth, Publishers Weekly over in the book world. And so, yeah, I like to think that I have a lot of experience. And the thing is, even though I published a local sort of local music newspaper. It was relatively small. Over the years, I've run into journalists of all types, from bloggers who just ran a small blog to people that were editors and columnists in national music magazines or whatever. And we all have the same story. I mean, it's amazing, the same war stories that we tell about people approaching us in the wrong way. And so I know that this is consistent. You know, what my experience is not unique because I was at a local level, but it's just human dealing with humans that are seeking exposure. So anyway, and I actually created an online course called the Music Publicity Insider's Guide that I released sometime a year or so ago, and I'm going to actually kind of go over some highlights from that. And also, as a special offer to our listeners, I'm actually going to lower the price of that for the next couple of weeks as we dive into this topic for anyone who wants to take a deeper dive. It started off at like $47. Currently, as we record this today, it's $29.95. I'm going to actually lower that to $19.95. For at least a couple of weeks as we cover this, for anybody that wants to take a little deeper dive. I'll have a link to that. It's on the Buzz Factor site. But cool. So I have the, so are you ready for me to lead this train? And I know you're going to have a lot of things to offer here, Billy, but are you still there?
No, I was going out to get a bite. I'll be back.
Yeah, you can just have a sandwich during this episode.
No, actually, before we get going, though, I mean, let's bring it down to, 101 here. Publicity is defined as the notice or attention given to someone or something by the media, or the giving out of information about a product, person, or company for advertising or promotional purposes. And finally, the last definition given here by Google, because you can trust Google, material or information used for publicity. And I gotta tell you, it's very broad, and I suspect that this is just going to be an intro to publicity today, right, Bob?
It is, yeah. We're just going to touch the basics, and in fact, we didn't even go over notes about what we're going to cover, and you are reading my mind because the very first note here I got is, "What is publicity?"
What is publicity?
It's amazing. So yeah, and you're right. It does mean different things to different people. So I would like to clarify what my definition of it and the way where I'm going to be coming from with it. It's really, for me, it's media exposure. It's basically, it's not paid advertising. That would be called advertising. It's not things that you do on your own, the things that you post on social media, things you do on your website, flyers you put up. To me, that's not publicity in the strictest sense, because it's just, that's just marketing activities you do on your own. So for me, publicity is when you get a third party that has an existing audience and you basically persuade them, or they feel compelled to cover you and expose you to their audience. So you do have to go through a gatekeeper to get publicity in the sense that I'm speaking of, and so it's So that's my definition of it. Although some people use the term in a broader sense, but so is that cool?
It is cool, and I'd like to just say this, because this is, with my group, we focus on marketing, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't understand that marketing, sales, advertising, publicity, PR, all these different things, these are separate entities that all live in the same, apartment building, so to speak, you know what I mean? But they are different, and they have their own conventions and their own rules and their own, things that you need to know. And I'm really glad that we're tackling this. And maybe in the future we could break down each one of these separate entities that are vital, but maybe not, maybe misunderstood a little bit. You know what I'm saying, Bob?
Right. Yeah. I know. And a lot of these terms are interchangeable, like marketing, public relations. Those are kind of big umbrella terms. Promotion is also sort of a vague, it's a sort of umbrella term. A lot of things fall under it. But for me, when I speak about publicity, just so we're clear, I'm talking about, and actually the next thing is, what is media? So we can talk about that. It kind of lends itself to go into this. So I'm talking about that third party thing. So it's going through media outlets. So traditionally, prior to the internet, and these things still exist. These are just some of the ways you can break down media. One is print. So that's any type of a news or music related source. That's newspapers, that's magazines, that's fanzines, which have been around a long time. They could be local, like mine was a St. Louis-based publication. They can be regional or related to a state or area. It could be national. They can be international in scope. And they and so there's the print versions of those. Now, obviously, most of them have, almost all of them have online components to them as well. So that's one aspect. Another one is what you call traditional broadcast. And by broadcast, I'm talking about anything that can be sent through the airwaves, although these days it's online and digital too. But that's basically radio and television. And so it's basically, obviously, radio is something that someone has set up their own outlet to communicate with people through their ears. With the TV, you've got the visual aspect of it, and that as well can be local, it can be regional, it can be national, it can be international. And so that includes college stations, both radio and TV, local cable, local morning shows, local the major broadcast affiliates, like we got NBC affiliates and Fox affiliates and all this stuff in St. Louis with their local programming, and just a ton more. And so also the other thing I want to clarify is when it comes to publicity, I'm not talking about radio airplay, like getting your songs in rotation. That is a form of promotion. And actually radio airplay was on our list of things that people could vote for. I'm not sure how it did in the voting. But I'm not talking about that type of radio exposure. So when I'm talking about radio, I'm probably going to be mostly talking about interviews and ways you can get mentioned in radio other than getting your songs in rotation. At least, again, with my definition of publicity. Is that are you on board with me so far, Mr. Gryzak?
Yeah. My pizza should be here any minute. Just keep going.
Yeah. So, and so there's some we need to really rethink what the definition of media was. So again, in the past, it was print and it was broadcast for the most part. Those were your media outlets, and there was a distinction between they were producers of the media. They were the people that had the money and the connections and the experience or whatever to do their own newspaper, to put on a radio show or a radio station, to create it was out of the reach of the average person. But as we know, over the past decade, that definition between the producers of content and the consumers of content is very much a gray area. Now everyone has access to the tools to create their own blog, to create their own podcast like we're doing. Anybody could do this.
Anybody can do it.
Damn it. And everybody seems like they are, and the same thing with YouTube channels and people creating videos. So the definition of a media outlet is so wide and varied. It's almost like it's lost, it's hard to wrap your brain around. There's this term citizen journalists that came out several years ago, again, where people took it upon themselves to write about things that were of interest to them. And they have readerships from, 2 people to millions, and everything in between. So again, when you're seeking publicity, the way that I define it, it's where you have to approach someone who has created their own platform, whether that be text-based, audio-based, video-based, whatever it is, and you're approaching them to go, hey, I got this thing that your audience would really love, and again, sometimes they will seek you out. Like a lot of the exposure that I've gotten was somebody was Googling something related to, and they found me related, in a search that they did and approached me, and I made myself available to comment on something or to be interviewed or whatever, which is great position to be in. But most musicians have to seek that publicity out. So you have to approach the people who have the platform and have the audience, and sort of give them the benefits, the reasons why you're worth covering. And we can go into that at a later thing, but we're just kind of laying the basics here, and so the next thing I guess to list here on our little music publicity 101 segment here is what kind of coverage can you get through these many media outlets? And these are just some of them. I got a list here, but I always like to, because I think people have tunnel vision when it comes to getting publicity. They think about the interview or the album review, and those are certainly cool ways, whether it's a blog or the local daily in your paper. I mean, in your city, but there are a lot of other things. So there's CD or album reviews. That's the classic form of publicity for obviously a new release. And those are still great to get. Probably not as common, but they're still you still see them in certain publications or blogs or live show reviews. And so this is where obviously a reporter or a journalist or a blogger goes out to see a band live in a certain city and writes something up. But the publicity comes after the fact as opposed to a preview of a show, which most bands want to get exposure prior to their gigs. There's something called column blurbs. And so, like, for instance, in my old newspaper, I used to have this little section that was like, who's doing what in the studio. And it was sort of a roundup. It might have been just one or two sentences on each band. So-and-so's in the studio or somebody's doing this. And, I think every, major newspaper or blog or whatever has these kind of columns with their like I call them short takes or little, mentions within a larger column. And those are often overlooked. But if you got something that a columnist can add into, who's doing what in the city or upcoming events, this week or something where you're sort of mentioned along with other stuff, that's cool. There are feature stories where, whether it's the cover story or it's a long article about a band or something cool that they're doing and they're involved with, which generally involves an interview. Those are really nice because that's a really meaty type of coverage that you can get. There's like the interview Q&A format where it's not an article where a writer has a lot of his own exposition there, but it's more of a Q&A, like, 5 questions with so-and-so. Those are nice to get too. And then there are lifestyle sections and other non-music coverage. It's not just in the music publications or the music section that you can, if you're involved with a charity or you've done something, there's something about you personally, whether you're a part-time chef or maybe you're a volunteer firefighter or something, you can tie in these other things related to what you're doing musically to where you can appear in other sections. And then there's the lowly calendar listing. This is my last little thing in my bullet points here. Just what, the free listings where you can post your upcoming gigs and what time it starts and what the cover charge is and all that stuff. So anyway, I've rambled on for a while here. So give me a little, stop eating your pizza. I'll take a drink. Go ahead and add something there.
Well, anyway, I've had like phenomenal success with things like the lifestyle section. And I've always managed to try. First of all, everybody needs to understand, sadly, nobody really cares that you have an album out. Not really. That's not newsworthy. Billy's got a record, Bob's got a record, that's just, and what they are interested in though is, for instance, Bob is working on this project to bring peace and harmony into the world, inspired by the events in Ferguson. He's a St. Louis native. I'm giving you some ideas here, Bob. And
hypothetical,
hypothetical, but I mean, it is national news. And if you did have a vested interest in it that tied in with something you did, even just commentary, because you live there, that's interesting. There's one fella in town here that is a huge Elton John fan. He has an amazing collection of Elton John memorabilia and stuff. And when Elton John comes to town, well, they go and see him. He just happens to be a local performer here in town, and they also get a little bit of like, he inspired me, and I'll be performing at blah blah blah. You know what I mean? I've done that with tying into school shows because working with kids, first day of school, different school events, then my train work. When there's different train events or Thomas comes to town. I mean, and I've had a great deal of success with television. I've been on TV so freaking much, and I've never paid for it, because I'm always tying into some other event that's coming to town, or I'm the performer, or, we're raising money for something or whatever's going on, and, sometimes I just talk. Sometimes they let me play some songs. It just varies. But I mean, there are, to be honest with you, the possibilities for publicity is mind-boggling. I mean, I don't know why more people don't do it. And maybe it's just insecurity. Maybe too many people listen to that voice inside their head that says, who are you to be in the paper? Who are you to be on TV? But somebody's got to do it. And the best advice I've ever gotten was, all of these people that are out there, whether it's newspapers or magazines or television shows, they need content. If they don't have content, they die, they go away. And so what I always say is pray for a slow news day. You know what I mean? And in a slow news day, if you got something that just might work just to fill in the gaps for them, well, now you're on TV, now you're in the paper, now you're in that magazine, now you're being interviewed by that person. I mean, you gotta ask, because if you don't ask, you won't get anything. And if you do ask, you might get something. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, it can't hurt to throw a bunch of stuff out there. But there's a way to go about it. But you're right. Yeah, there's tons of content. There's tons of airtime that needs to be filled. People, podcasters and radio shows, they need guests. They need music to play in the background of certain stories. They need to write about stuff. And so yeah, you're right. There's no shortage of opportunities. I think the reason that people don't either pursue it more is because they don't know how. They think it's all like some sort of insiders club, and you have to know somebody and all this stuff. And it is true. I mean, relationships with anything, it's, you're a lot of people, I think, like to think of the media as this entity, but it's a collection of people. Just like when you're dealing with venues or record labels, it's not some machine, even though it might feel like it at times. You're dealing with the individual people there. And if you connect with them or treat them like humans, you're going to increase your odds. And I think, and I don't want to go into the details of that now, because we're kind of getting close to the end of this one, but maybe if we want to do multiple episodes on this topic, we can pick up how to approach the media. But basically, most people go about it in the wrong way, and it's an innocent mistake that people make, because you think that, I have this new album out, or I have this show that I want to promote. So when you get the person, you send an email or you leave a voicemail, you're talking about, you and what you need, as opposed to what they need. We can get more into that later, but so it's a very self-centered approach that people take. And I would like to go, if we could continue this in the next one, I'd be happy to go through what I call like the evolution of an insider's view of the music media and what it's actually like to be a journalist. Because again, I did it for 10 years, and I could share some light on that, and then how it relates to how you need to think from their point of view when you approach them.
Sounds great. So on that note right there, I'm going to stop you. We're going to stop. We're going to say, hey, we had our introduction to Publicity, and now we're going to do one of our famous, we don't know how many parts it's going to be, but we're going to move on to the next section, which is, of course, approaching the media and how to do it right and how not to do it, or whatever, right?
Yeah, and what it's like to be in a journalist's shoes from my 10 years of experience and my rubbing elbows with many other writers. We share the same type of war stories.
Ooh.
And so, yes. So we're going to continue, though, if it's okay with you, Billy, to put a link to that poll. So if you missed, voting last week, you can still go there and choose among our the long list that we have, and you can write in your own topic, and we'll continue to monitor that as we plan what we're going to do after this Publicity thing. But yeah, I would still like to hear what people have to think.
Yeah, and we thank everybody for, first of all, taking the time to listen today. That means a lot to us. Taking the time to download, to share, and all of the input on Twitter at hashtag MusicMM and at the poll. So thank you. And Bob, tell them one more time about that special that you're running, because I dig it.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, I'll just second what you said. We love when we can interact with you. We don't want this to be a one-sided conversation or one direction. Although that is the name of the band, isn't it? But anyway, so yes, I have this online course. It's audio. It's got a little bit of video. It's like the worksheets that you can actually, where you apply these concepts to music publicity to yourself. It's called the Music Publicity Insider's Guide. It's like an hour and a half or 2 hours of audio broken up into lessons, like 5 or 6 different lessons that you can take at your own pace, all posted online. If you just go to thebuzzfactor.com, again, thebuzzfactor.com, then click on the books tab. Even though this isn't a book, all my resources and courses and so on are listed there. And I think it's one of the top listings in there. It's called Music Publicity Insider's Guide. Click there to find out more about it. I will lower the price to a mere $19.95 for the next couple of weeks. And it was originally like $47. And so I would love, if you want to take a deeper dive, I share in great detail my wisdom and give you a lot of advice also about how to craft what I call news hooks and story ideas. It's basically taking your story and slicing and dicing it into all these different little hooks that you can pitch to different people depending on the media source, depending on who you are as an artist. And yeah, it's one of the best things I've actually ever created. So if that speaks to you, go check it out.
It's speaking to me, man. It's speaking to me. Cool. Hey, and of course you can reach me, Billy Gryzak, at Music Market Mind on Twitter. You could go to Music Marketing Mind on www.musicmarketingmind.com. And as always, we have a free Facebook group for music career support. It's Music Marketing Mind. It's a Facebook group. Look it up. We can't wait to chat, interact, and help each other out. Okay?
You betcha. This was a good one. Music Publicity 101. Let's continue it next week. You have a great one, and let's just pray for peace and stability and all that good stuff.
All we are saying is
give peace a chance. Oh, I was kind of trying to do a harmony there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just freaking out that we'd have to pay some royalties.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Bye-bye, everybody.
All right, have a good one. So long for now.
Peace.
Out.
Are you still there? Excellent! Now would be a good time to visit hostbaby.com for your free 30-day trial. Of course.